President, Leslie, ladies and gentlemen, I think one of the key takeaways between Red Dot Ventures and Lipton Hall is that with the expertise of Leslie, with Red Dot's portfolio companies, and with the technopreneurship programs that we are bringing to Myanmar, we have identified tools that are simple, practical, and easy to use that will take the technologist with the idea and make it a business. And once it's a business, we will help it become international. Good afternoon. My name is Charlie Ill, and for the next hour, we're going to cover how you can establish a business efficiently and quickly. There are 4 key milestones to starting a business, to building the idea of a business model. The first is document your plan A. The second, identify and prioritize your risks. Thirdly, test your plan. Test your assumptions and then readjust. And then lastly, get ready to launch Business Model 1.0. So let's get started. My colleague Julian has handed out some lean canvases for you. Leslie has touched upon the point as well. The lean canvas is a very easy way to organize all 9 aspects of your business onto a single piece of paper. If you notice box number 4, the solutions box, you realize that the product is not necessarily going to make your business successful. But just like Leslie was saying earlier, 10% of your strategy, even though it's 10%, it is probably the most important part of your business. And the lean canvas helps you design an effective winning strategy. So it is in fact the business and how each square interacts with each other that will make your business successful. So what makes this approach lean? It requires the technologist, the entrepreneur, to upfront document or commit to the assumptions that you want for your business. And then through a systematic approach, you're able to eliminate those business plans that are least successful to succeed. You're essentially eliminating the waste that you would otherwise have committed to pursue a business plan that may not succeed. At this point, you should have some lean canvases in front of you. And what I'd ask for the audience to do is use the top right-hand corner for reference as to where we are on the lean canvas. We will cover the canvas in the order that is recommended to complete it. And I will use an example to help. So the first is the problem statement. Basically, you want to identify the top 3 problems that you perceive your customers will experience. The important point of this is that it's the root cause. That it's not just a problem that is a nice-to-have problem, or it's a problem that exists, but it's a problem that no one today, no existing alternatives have the correct solution for. It's a problem that your customers will go the distance to pursue. In the example I have here, we use a business scenario. It's, the company name is called Cloudfire. Cloudfire was designed by a new parent who found that he had little time to share photos of his new child, his newborn, to the rest of his family, because it's too difficult to balance work life, his home life, his family life, raising the newborn, and then on top of that, make sure that all of the rest of his family is informed on the photos. And so his problem statement, his parents have no free time with their newborn. And he also cites the existing alternatives, and that no existing alternative today efficiently solves the problem. Now we're on to customer segments. You need to identify the user roles. You need to be specific. Specificity is very important because this is a niche market. You can't go mass market right away. Most startups are successful finding your niche and then branching out from there. So for example, Facebook, their niche was Harvard. Harvard Business School was the start. Apple's niche was artists in the premier financial category. So IBM was the major corporations. Everybody starts with a niche. When we review the problem and customer segment of our Cloudfire scenario, the creator of Cloudfire, having just become a parent, has observed the perfect storm to explore further. First was the number of photos that he took for his child increased significantly with the newborn. Second, he was sleep deprived because the child was up every hour of the night. And so existing solutions were time consuming and he didn't have enough time to commit. And so he identified key customers. Our parents, families and friends, which would be the viewers, parents would be the creators of the content. But a better customer segment, a better customer statement may be parents with newborns between the ages of 2 and 4. Be specific. The third step is the unique value proposition. This is what differentiates your product or your business from anybody else. Now, you're going to focus on benefit-centric story. You're going to focus on what your customer is going to get out of it. So in our example, the Cloudfire example, we use the fastest way to share your photos and video. A better unique value proposition may be time that you get back to spend more time with your child. Yes, it's great that you can fast upload your photos. But when you tie it with the customer, who are parents of newborns, it's in fact you're buying time back to spend raising your child or spend with your family. So get to the core of what the unique value proposition may be. Cool. Then we come to the solution. A small box, but I know everyone is eager with the solutions. They have their product. So identify the top 3 features. These are the features that every customer you're approaching must have. These are not complementary, these are the core features of your product. Then comes your unfair advantage. The unfair advantage is, in my opinion, one of the more important slides, or important sections of it. Because in a discussion yesterday, someone had brought to my attention that there was a concern. Well, what if international competition comes in? They have more funding, they have more resources. They can easily scoop up our businesses, or they can take away our market share. This is what prevents that from happening. An unfair advantage is something that is valuable, something that is rare. You cannot imitate it. It's non-substitutable, so there aren't substitutes that exist, and it's exploitable. Examples of this would be patents. Another example, let's use Apple for example, Steve Jobs' creativity. Your examples may be that you know the local market, that you are experts in your own backyard. In his, it was a community. Step 6, the revenue streams. As an entrepreneur, the objective is always to offer the maximum price the customer is willing to pay. So when you start out with that price. Start out with the price that you think customers will pay. Don't go lower. It's important that a too low price delays the validation. You need to validate your business model. You need to validate that customers want your business model by getting paid. Cost structure, understand your cost structure. There's fixed costs, variable costs. You need to also factor in customer interviews, which will be part of the testing phase. And you also need to understand what costs are required to develop your minimum viable product. Okay? Key metrics. Now Leslie covered this earlier in the social media slide. It was the table, it's a funnel. And Julian also covers this as well. But your key metrics basically identify how your customers are going through your product and when do they become a paying customer. By identifying these key metrics, you will notice where your customers are dropping off. And you'll be able to fix problems quickly and efficiently. So the acquisition phase is the point when a stranger becomes interested in your product or your app or your website. The activation phase is where the first time a customer has a user experience. They don't just visit your site, they have an experience. Then the retention phase, one of the most important parts of your process, is whether the customers will come back, depending on the nature of your business. If you're a subscription model, you need retained customers that will continue to pay. If you're selling one lump sum right at the beginning, you need to make sure that you have a strong activation channel. Then your revenue helps measure the outcome in events and changes. And then lastly is your referral. This is an advanced form channel, to acquire more customers, and it's probably one of the most effective ones. Word of mouth is a great way to spread your product to scale it. Channels. I think the first point is very important. No channel is free. Some are low cost, but what you're paying is for time. So, preferring inbound versus, selecting automated versus manual operations. This is also a very important point. And as a business manager, as someone who's starting a business, you need to understand which you're going with. If you do automation of your operations, sure, it's at lower cost. But it's also, the learning curve is a lot slower. If you do manual, you're going to pay more, but you'll learn a lot faster. You'll become more effective faster. You'll know your business. Selling direct versus indirect is also, I think, important. Direct, you maximize learning about your customers. You can then adapt faster than the competition. Versus indirect, which leverages other people's resources. So this will be a completed lean canvas example. Okay? This is one of 4, because different segments require different business plans. These lean canvases should take you no more than 30 minutes to sit down and mash it out quickly. Share it with a friend, bounce ideas off each other, but it's supposed to be dynamic. As we go through the 4 milestones, this lean canvas will change from what it looks like now to something else, something different. And because it's called lean, you are identifying which business models are least likely to succeed. So at the end, you go from 4 to 1. Second milestone is identify your business model. Identify and prioritize your risks. Most important point here is be honest. Be honest with yourself about what potential risks you will encounter. Because if you're not honest with yourself, or you don't correctly identify the key risks, you will be wasting additional time later on to then have to realize that, in fact, those were risks. So understanding risk, startup risk can be divided into 3 main categories. You have your product risk, your customer risk, and your market risk. Depending on which stage of the business you are, will identify which is the priority, which is the greatest amount of risk. So prioritize them based on the stage, and then tackle them systematically. Ranking business models. What we've done is identified 6 other criteria in which you can rank your business models. And you can prioritize which of the 4 business models, which of the 4 lean canvases is most effective. So I'm going to touch on the first three. The most important is customer pain level. Prioritize the customer segments that you believe will need your product the most. The goal is to have one or more of your top 3 problems as must-haves. It is the core of their problem. It is the main point of their problem. The second, prioritize easier paths to one customer segment over others, because building paths to customers is very difficult to do as a startup, especially when you're limited on resources. So access the customers that are easiest to access first. And then the third, price and gross margin. What you can charge for your product is largely driven by the customer segment. So pick a customer segment that allows you to maximize on your margins. Make sure that you're getting the most out of your product, the most out of your business. We're into the third milestone, which is to test your plan. Objectivity is important. Be objective. Use numbers. Rank 1 to 5. And be consistent. First step. How do you know if you have the right problem? So you need to then go back and test your assumptions that you made in your plan A of your business model. And then once you've identified that yes, in fact, these assumptions are true, you can solidify them into your model. But if they're false, you need to adjust. You need to readjust your business model in a way that then you continually learn and you continually make a more cohesive or more successful business. So first is testing your problem. Create falsifiable hypothesis. A falsifiable hypothesis is basically, instead of trying to prove something is true, try and prove something is false. Make a statement that proves something is false. So for example, in the example we were using, the Cloudfire example, one of the falsifiable hypotheses that he creates, for example, a problem statement in the problem section, one of those 2 boxes, problem interviews will validate customer use of one or more existing alternatives. And then he will go back and prove that that's false. The second is your face-to-face interviews. This is also very important because understanding how your customers react to your top problems is going to give you better insight as to whether that problem resonates with them or not, with your customers, or if you need to change the problem statement, or if you need to change the customer. So prepare yourself to interview at least 30 to 60 people. Prepare yourself with a script, because objectivity is important for testing your plan, and so is consistency. Make sure that that script is consistent so that when you test each person, their responses are the only things that change, not the interview, not the questions you're asking. The objective is to validate that you understand the problem. So you want to review results weekly. You want to focus on the early adopters of your product, early adopters of your business. So you want to look at the demographic data. You want to refine your problems, and you want to substitute weak problems with problems that are must-have problems. So you have your 3. It turns out this one's not very important to your customer. Eliminate it and replace it with something that is important to your customer. Get down to the root cause or the core that people struggle with. And then understanding existing alternatives. Early adopters today are using something else to fulfill what they want done. It may not be perfect, but that's what they're doing today. Understand what that is and make it better. Conducting the problem interviews. This is important. When you meet with your 30 to 60 people, it's good to have a step-by-step, systematic progression so that you have a clear idea as to what information you want to pull from your customers before going into the first interview. So set that script. Make that script. Some things I want to identify from this problem interview is when you collect your demographics, you're capturing the data needed to build a customer profile. It's important to understand who your customers are. So then when you tell a story, when you're at the tell a story stage and you're trying to tell a story, you don't want to tell them, these are the problems I've discovered and is this true or not. You in fact want to tell them the story and see if it resonates with them. See if they go, yeah, that's the problem. And sometimes they'll come back and say, oh, well, yeah, I agree with this, but that's not in fact the problem, this is the problem. It's not about uploading photos faster. It's about reaching out to the family in an easier way. So by telling the story, you leave it open-ended. You leave it an open-ended response. And then lastly, another important one is in the wrapping up. Wrapping up is the first questions you want to ask. These potential people that you're interviewing will be potential customers someday. And so an important part of this is to ask customers if they're interested in seeing a demo. Lock them in for the next step. You're building a relationship so that after several of these interviews, which you'll have to go through for the testing phase, they are your buying customers because you've talked them in, you've built the rapport. And so you want to document your results from that interview. As the previous slide suggested, it should take no more than 5 minutes to document your results up front. And then once you've collected enough information, you should be able to map over slides and graphs exactly what your customers are looking for, what you thought was supposed to happen and what they actually think is the actual problem. Okay? And then obviously adjust your business model, your lean canvas as well. Make sure that when you adjust your lean canvas, you're reaching what the real problem is. And so for our Cloudfire example, in fact, the problem wasn't that there wasn't enough time for parents and that photos were too often when having a newborn. In fact, it was sharing lots of photos and videos is time consuming, and most parents don't in fact know how to share videos. Today they use email. That's an existing alternative. And so is there a better way to educate parents on how to share videos with family? It'll change your entire business. By the end of your interview problems, you should be able to predict exactly what your customers are going to say before they say it. When you are at that stage, and you can do that with 10 people consistently, you're complete with the problem interview process. When you know exactly, when you tell the same story, you know exactly what the customers are going to say. You know what the problem is, you know what the root cause is. And now you can move on to identifying what your solution will be. Testing your solution is designed exactly like testing your problems. You built a solution, and now you go back and interview those same people and some new customers on the solution. Solution interviews will validate the minimum viable product. The demo needs, and then when you're presenting or you're using a demo, it needs to simulate your solution to the problem, but it does not have to be functional in order to be useful. So for example, there was a company I met a while back who wanted to build an app for skiers on ski slopes, and they wanted to identify the fastest way to go up and down a ski slope because there's lines. And they want to maximize the amount of time actually skiing, not waiting in lines for ski slopes. Well, it turns out that, in fact, what they should have done, what they eventually did for the minimum viable product to test it, as the interviews, as testing your solution, is they instead put maps. They put everyone they put their team at the bottom of every ski slope, and they gave each person a walkie-talkie. And the person at the walkie-talkie would report to someone standing at the top of the ski slope. And the person at the top of the ski slope would meet skiers and say, look, this trail happens to have few people in line. And so you can go down this trail and you won't have to wait in line at the bottom of the ski slope. Does this solution resonate with you? Is this something that you would like to have? Some people said, yes, it's a nice to have. Most people did say this is a must have. And so through that process, it's not the app. He didn't waste time programming. He put it on a piece of paper. He had a couple of his buddies on walkie-talkies. He was able to save time. He was able to save money. So save time, not programming. Save money. And he was able to identify whether customers wanted that product or not. So you can find easy substitutions without having to waste a lot of time in building the first product. Validate you understand the solution. So one of the key points here is you want to review what you've previously learned with the customers. You want to approach customers that you've already approached for the problem interviews, and then you want to review with them what you've previously learned. Again, look at the demographics. You're going to attract more customers in your solution interview. You have now a clear idea who your customers are, so you're going to replicate that process. Find more people like your customers. And you're going to then ask for their demographics. Make sure that they fit within the customer segment. And then you want to match the final solution so it's relevant to what you eventually deliver. It looks like the real solution. So it can be credible to users, but your solution will be better. The actual completed product will be better. Whatever you do, make sure that your final product surpasses the expectations set by your demo. Solution interview looks a lot like the problem interview. What you're trying to do is break it down into its parts, just like the last one. Keep it objective, keep to a script, and have a clear idea going into the interview what you want to take out of it. So that the only thing that changes is the customer's responses, not your script. We're on to the final milestone of establishing a business. The key point here is to focus on building the minimum for business model 1.0. When you release, it's important that you provide the minimum amount of features required to solve the customer's root cause problem. Up to this point, you've now identified which problems are the most riskiest, or which problems are going to be most likely unsuccessful, and you've eliminated them from your list. Remember the 4? You're now down to 1. You've tested your plan, you've adjusted your plan, you've rewritten it, so now you have a cohesive, lean canvas that with a minimum viable product, you should be able to release to the market, and you'll have customers purchasing your product. Because they've committed at this point. Two things you need to do to validate your minimum viable product. A minimum viable product means it is the product with the minimum amount of features required to solve the customer's problem. The first validation is a qualitative analysis. It's a partial rollout, or partially deploy your product to just a few customers first. Conduct usability interviews, also known as minimum viable product interviews, similar to your problem interview, similar to your solution interview. Make sure that your customers, that it resonates with your customers. They've now seen it, and they understand it, and yeah, that's it. That's what's going to solve my problem. That's the response you want to get. So what is compelling about the product? The questions, when you walk away from the validation, you want to know that the customers and you are aligned on what is compelling about your product, that you have enough customers, and lastly, that the price is right. If customers are willing to pay the price you're asking for. So again, you're formulating a testable hypothesis. Again, going back, just like problems interviews and the solution interviews. MVP interviews will validate the unique value proposition on marketing websites, where the MVP will generate positive response from its customers. Look familiar? Conduct an MVP interview just like your problem interview, just like your solution interview. It is systematic. It is the same process. By now, you've interviewed 30 to 60 in your problem interview, 40 to 80 in your solution interview. So you ought to be an expert by now in interviewing people. And so this process should happen very quickly. You should know exactly what you want out of it. It is repeatable. First thing you should do is show a landing page. If you have an app at this point, it's very basic form. Show the landing page, show the first page. And ask your customers, what is the unique value proposition? What are you drawing out of this? See if they recognize instantly, oh, this is going to solve my root cause problem. If they think it's something else, then you need to go back and readjust your landing page. You need to make sure that the right words are represented on the front page so that your customers know instantly what your product is providing. If you notice with Pirate 3D's example, on Leslie's slides, you can see the printer on the right-hand side. When they went on Kickstarter, the growth was like this because it was instant. Customers instantly understood what his printer was doing. Make sure it is obvious to your customers what you are supplying. Then you show the pricing page stage. See if your customers are willing to pay for what you're offering them. And lastly is the sign-up and activation stage. Walk your customer. So, at this point on the problem interview, you asked them to try out the demo. They said yes. You built the rapport. You've done the solution interview, and again, you've asked them, are you willing to try the minimum viable product? And they say yes. This is your third time coming back to that same customer. You've built the rapport, you've built the trust. The hardest thing with the startup is earning the trust of your customers. How do I know that this product is actually going to work? If I have to pay money, I want to make sure it works. You don't have any credibility, no background. You built that trust through the first stages of your interview, and now you're in the minimum viable product interview, and now they're ready to sign on. They're ready to pay that money because they know who you are. They've spoken to you enough times. They know that you understand what you're going for. So show the landing page first, show the pricing stage, and then the sign-up and activation. The sign-up and activation is validation. It confirms the interest when asking the customer to complete the sign-up on your activation process. First paying customer is a validation that yes, they will buy your product. Now you have something people are willing to pay for. So when a customer pays, you know they're willing to pay. Then we go to the quantitative analysis. This is the second of validating your minimum viable product. On the quantitative side of validating minimum viable product, you're using a lot of your key metrics. The attraction, activation, revenue, retention, revenue, and referral. Remember the key metrics that I spoke about in the slide? These are what you're measuring, and you're going to use numbers now. It's not just an objective, not a subjective opinion that customers will buy your product. You now have numbers. You can now identify the whole process a customer is going to go through, and you'll see where they drop off. Maybe it's in the activation, maybe it's in the referral stage. You want to understand, what can I tweak of my minimum viable product to make sure I get a greater percentage of customers that become paying customers? So a conversion funnel becomes more accurate. That would be considered a conversion funnel. A funnel where you convert from a interested person to a paying customer. Conversion funnel becomes more accurate when you break it down into individual parts. So break it down per week. When you release a new feature, you'll see instantly what the response is. Or you can break it down per feature. For acquisition and activation, you can analyze sub-funnels to understand drop-offs, contact users to learn why they stopped at a particular stage, and discover unreported issues that are causing people to leave. So if your customers are leaving your product, you need to learn fast what it is and what's the reason why and how you can fix it. Once you validate it, you're ready for the product launch. And so criteria for the launch is quite simple. And it can change depending on who you speak to. But from our methodology, 80% of early adopters successfully make it through your conversion funnel. That means 80% of your customers are now paying. 40% of your users are successfully retained. They use your product more than once. They continue to use your product. And your early adopters, by looking at your minimum viable product, can explain your unique value proposition. They can make it through the activation flow seamlessly. They want to sign up. They accept the pricing that you're offering. And they'll provide positive testimonials. They'll provide testimonials so that other customers will come in and see their testimonials and go, Joe likes it, so I'll like it because Joe's my buddy. Action, so then the action required, acquisition. So there are priorities in your key metrics that you need to do. The first priority in the acquisition and activation stage is ensure that you're driving enough traffic to support learning, to support customers. Make sure you're getting enough customers to support your business. Then in the retention side, make sure the users are coming back. That is your priority. Do anything necessary to do that. Emails, blogs, call them up on the phone. Make sure your customers are coming back to your product. And if they're not, find out why. Revenue, the priority is get paid. Make sure they're paying. No business will survive with non-paying customers unless you have enough funding like Instagram with 100 million before revenue was coming in. If you don't have that funding, you need to make sure your customers are funding your next steps. And then lastly is your referrals. Get those testimonials. Make sure people trust your startup. When other people see customers trust you, they'll trust you as well. So now that you've launched Business Model 1.0, what's next? You need to keep up the pace. You need to shift from learning to scaling. You need to now scale your business. You have your first customers, they are your early adopters, and you now need to transition or cross the gap between an early adopter and a mainstream customer. Don't abandon running the lean methodology. You have your core business, and now you want to add a second business to it, a horizon, a growth horizon. This methodology works for people with existing businesses today. If they want to create a new feature of their business or a new part of their business, running this lean methodology to understand customers like your product, to understanding that the problem and the solution that your growth solution is going to provide is important. So that you eliminate that waste. Because the most important resources as a startup is time and money. I hope that you can use this methodology going forward. And one of the most important things is Red Dot, with the expertise that we have in our portfolio companies as well as with Leslie. And the Technopreneurship program from Linton Hall will help hone your skills on these tools. There's additional tools in here not stated, but this is the core parts of it. And we'll be able to help you take that idea, make it a business, and then with that business, Go international. Thank you.